Today is Wednesday, August 14th. We are now live with the latest in the crypto world. It's 9:30 a.m. in New York City, 2:30 p.m. in London, 10:30 p.m. in Tokyo, and 3:30 p.m. here in Malta. Jason Fernandez and John Walsh will share their expert opinions with us on today's show. But first, let's see where the crypto markets stand. The cryptocurrency index, CCI 30, has been heading south to slip below the 3,700 point mark. The index has lost 4% so far in August. The year-to-date gain has actually moderated to slightly less than 70%. The 30-day Bitcoin volatility index continued trending south yesterday to hit 4.4%. This is the lowest level since June 27th. Now, trading activity has increased with the markets heading lower. The CoinMarketCap website's daily volume indicator is up by more than $10 billion over the past 24 hours to measure at $55 billion. The Messari website's real-time measure of the traded volume is approaching the $2 billion territory. The Bitcoin dominance indicator has continued trending south. It has settled at 67.5% after approaching the 70% zone last week. Now, the top 5 digital assets are mostly trading lower. Bitcoin shows the top decline as the crypto king has dropped to trade at less than $11,000. Ether is slightly in the red to find support at the $205 price level. XRP has moved further south of that key 30-cent psychological level, and Bitcoin Cash bucks the generally bearish mood to briefly trade at more than $350. And lastly, Litecoin has been trading near the $85 mark during most of the past 24 hours. The Coin 360 heat map showcases why the Bitcoin dominance indicator is down. The majority of the digital assets are trading lower, as we can see here, but BTC shows a particularly dark shade of red. Now, according to the Token Spread website, the Coinbase and XMO exchanges had the biggest arbitrage for the Bitcoin-dollar pair, but it is less than 1%. The XMO marketplace has the biggest spread for the same pair. Now, today we will take a quick look at some of the characteristics of Dusk Network. It is a privacy-oriented blockchain protocol that can be used to create zero-knowledge decentralized applications. It was launched in 2017 to address challenges like scalability, privacy, and compliance. The platform is looking to actually improve the proof-of-stake model by introducing a segregated Byzantine agreement. The native token is Dusk, and it is used to pay transaction fees as well as to vote on the governance. The price of this digital asset peaked at close to 62 cents in July of this year, and currently it can be purchased for 15 cents. We will now review the performance of various cryptocurrency asset classes as grouped by the Messari website. The infrastructure group is down by slightly more than 3%. This is despite EOS, Ethereum, Classic, and Cardano all posting gains. The media and entertainment category is the most bearish asset class with a drop that exceeds 6%. The Steam token goes against the bearish trend here. The financial sector is down by 2%, and the bullish chain token is proving support here. The currency category posts a decline of 2.4%. Bitcoin is one of the top bearish drivers today. And lastly, the services section is down by slightly more than 3%. And there is, of course, red across the board. This is where the 5 major cryptocurrency categories stand so far this Wednesday. We will now provide you with an overview of the most significant moves among the top 100 cryptocurrencies. Then we will be back with our crypto experts after this short break, so make sure you do not go anywhere.
180 different countries all around the world, which makes us grow in like a sphere.
We are stronger than ever.
Have these questions answered without disclosing anything.
AI field is mostly controlled by a few large corporations.
Much busier, bigger than ever.
In the mid-2020s. I do think that will come.
We should kind of keep in mind that we want the world to be a better place.
$15 billion a day. This is incredible.
People find a way to create infrastructure.
I think knowledge is one of the most important things in the world.
We laid the foundation for the distributed trust model that Satoshi builds on.
It does come with some risks, but at the same time, I think it's an opportunity for countries.
Individuals miss the boat on a market, they miss the boat. When the institutions miss the boat, they bring the boat back.
This is BloxLive TV.
We are back with our crypto experts. We have Jason Fernandez, COO and co-founder of the AE token, and John Walsh, City AM contributing writer, Coin Rivet columnist, and blockchain business strategist. Guys, pleasure having you on program today. How are you doing?
Great to be here.
So, John, we will come to you first. Lots to discuss because after failing to break through that $12,000 level last week, Bitcoin has dropped to trade at less than $11,000 today. So what is your take on the most recent market moves?
So I think this is part of a kind of overall trend. We've seen Bitcoin go from 3,200, 3,300 back in early February, mid-February, up to the sort of $13,000 mark in mid-July. So I think it's mostly a kind of natural correction. It's frequent for people who watch the markets the way that myself and Jason do, and other people like us, to be able to kind of want to point to other things, macroeconomic, regulatory, or Argentina, China, whatever it might be. But I think if we look at the market in general, it kind of makes sense that it's a smoothing out of the ramp that we had between sort of February and July.
Okay, because we are often talking about geopolitics and how it's affecting the markets, but I guess on your opinion today, it's kind of just a natural correction we're seeing. So Jason, welcome to the program. We'll come to you. What are your thoughts on these moves?
So I think the natural correction was sort of when we went from 14 back down to 9, and I think we've slowly made it up to 10 and 11. And sort of now things are not looking good. Things are sort of looking bearish. The charts sort of signal a move downward around the 10K support. And I think part of this has to do with we've seen sort of that Bitcoin has been a safe haven asset to some extent. And when the traditional financial markets have been in turmoil, that has thus far been pretty good for Bitcoin. But sort of yesterday, we heard that the Trump administration suspended plans to impose new tariffs on something like $156 billion in goods from China. And we know that conversely, when the trade war was heating up, Bitcoin went up. So I think it would be a fair analysis to say that perhaps because the reverse is happening and sort of Trump decided not to impose these new tariffs, that the reverse has happened, and that's sort of done, sort of worked badly for Bitcoin. Because sort of usually people think that the whole idea of this $156 billion in goods from China, that if there was a tariff on it, we may have actually seen Bitcoin go up. And sort of this was due to the concerns of the impact of an escalating trade fight between China, and that's sort of what the U.S. was trying to head off. And we saw obviously that the Dow was up 2% yesterday, and I think other markets are also going to be up. So I think this has something to do with it.
Okay, so quite a different opinion there between the two of you. I guess, Jason, you're more looking at, well, actually, no, geopolitics, the trade war between China and between America is, of course, affecting the markets. It's affecting the price of Bitcoin there. So just moving on, because it's been an interesting week filled with news, because over the past week, we have seen the SEC actually delaying the Bitcoin ETF decisions. People's Bank of China saying their digital currency is now ready. New Zealand actually opening up a taxing crypto salaries. So we will come back to you, John. What are your thoughts? What do you consider to be the key event here, and why?
So for me, the key event of the week has actually been the SEC shutting down Veritasium. I think that this is bigger news for what it could mean for the whole of the crypto space. I think that ever since Trump tweeted out about his dislike of Bitcoin and Libra, that I think that that's signaled to the SEC that they need to be on top of their game. And I think that we're going to see, as well as the XRP that I know we'll be discussing shortly, action that we're going to see a lot more. We've also had the big kick-in SEC movement maybe about a month ago. So I think that we're going to see more of this. And for me, the way that the SEC shut down Veritasium with its urgent order and just freezing all assets, that's a big thing. And I think it should be bigger news than it actually is.
Okay, but definitely that SEC there, that news. And I think it's quite interesting how you're looking at Trump and saying, well, you know, his tweets have actually concerned the SEC. Jason, we will come back to you. What, in your opinion, for you, has really been one of the biggest events that's really stood out this week?
So the SEC ETF decision, I think, was the fact that they delayed it, of course, was sort of expected. Those filings were published in the Federal Register sometime around February and June, which started out a countdown for something like 240 days before the final decision was due. So the final decision for the Bitwise and the VanEck/SolidX proposals are not due till October 13th and October 18th, respectively. So it seems like there's some time for that. With the exception of the with the exception of the SEC, central banks have sort of the other thing you mentioned, for example, the People's Bank of China saying that their digital currency is ready. Sort of central banks are increasingly looking to issue their own crypto for various reasons, mostly because they see the benefits of cryptocurrency, but they want to maintain their monopoly on sort of the creation of new currency. So they're sort of getting into the game, but they want to be able to control it. We also know this is happening in India, for example. Despite a 10-year proposed ban on cryptocurrency, India is still considering releasing their own sanctioned cryptocurrency. So that's something that we've seen a lot, and I think that it'll happen more and more with central banks around the world. Finally, the most exciting part, you said what would be the most key thing that's happened lately, is probably the fact that New Zealand has decided to start accepting, start making it legal for people to pay employees in cryptocurrency. So I think cryptocurrency in general lives and dies on adoption alone. At least for the most part, and the more places where cryptocurrency is sort of accepted as sort of an accepted financial compensation, particularly in New Zealand, the better it is for the industry at large. So I think all these things, with the exception of the SEC decision, all the other factors sort of show how cryptocurrency is increasingly enmeshing itself in our financial system.
I guess for you, like you said, you know, that SEC delay for you was expected. So when we look at China, we look at the news coming out of New Zealand, really that's really, I guess, what's taken the headlines this week. And especially, you know, you talk about adoption, and you're absolutely right. Without adoption, what's the point in crypto if we can't actually start to use it? So like I said, it does live and die there. So some very exciting news coming out of New Zealand. We'll have to keep an eye and see how that goes. Just moving on, we will slightly just stick with the SEC, but investors have actually previously filed a complaint against Ripple that XRP is a security. And John, we will come to you because most recently a new and amended complaint highlights that according to the SEC's framework for digital assets, XRP might be a security. So do you actually consider XRP to be a security, and what would it mean for the asset if the judge actually ruled that it is indeed a security?
So there's a few things in this. The first thing I would say is that it's not whether I consider something a security or not, but I look very, as the SEC does, looks to the Howey test. And there's 4 prongs to the Howey test. Is it an investment of money? Is there an expectation of profits? Is it common enterprise? So is the money pooled together? And are the profits from the efforts of a third party? Now, for me, XRP's launch fits that. So yes, I see that as a security under the Howey test. The really interesting thing here is that the FCA in the UK doesn't believe that XRP is a security, and they believe that it's similar in features to Ethereum, which they said is a utility as Bitcoin. So for me, I think the fun's going to be when one territory says it is and one territory says it isn't.
Okay, well, there you go. And I think the Howey test is definitely an important one to look at, like you said, when trying to figure out whether something is a security or not. Jason, your thoughts for us, please.
So this is a new amended complaint, and it sort of draws on the SEC's framework for digital assets. and sort of makes the case for why XRP might be a security, sort of based on what the SEC has actually put out. And this is the first federal case to make this argument. And the filing sort of cites California advertising law and federal securities law to say that essentially Ripple's promotion of XRP was essentially promoting an unregistered security. And sort of this is the first time that Ripple will actually have to respond to this in any sort of substantive manner. But basically, obviously the SEC framework explains how the Howey test is applied in this sort of situation. So one of the points that the lawsuit makes is XRP purchasers made an investment of money in a common enterprise. Another point they make is XRP investors had a reasonable expectation of profits. And finally, XRP sort of the appreciation of XRP would depend on the success of Ripple and others. And so essentially the price of XRP is dependent on Ripple's efforts. And this sort of goes back to what exactly Ripple is in the first place and how exactly the price moves. There's really not a clear reason why Ripple should increase in price or decrease in price, because ultimately it's the money is only Ripple when it's in transit, and it's sort of transferred back into fiat currency when it gets onto the other side. So there are a lot of factors that affect the price of XRP, not least of which is hype. And so I'm not sure how that ties into the whole question of securities. Also, there's a whole thing about South Korea and Malta. So a whole lot of XRP is actually located in South Korea and Malta and on exchanges over there. And the users of those exchanges can basically affect the price of XRP. So, and also these two states are the leading traders of XRP at the moment. And when South Korea changes regulation, which has been one of the things, so even factors like South Korean legislation and regulation can affect the price of XRP. So I'm really not sure whether one can make the argument that the price of XRP is dependent on the fortunes of Ripple, the company. That's what the whole question has been. You know, I mean, people sort of think of Ripple, the price of XRP tracking Ripple's fortunes as a company, and that's not really exactly been the case. There doesn't seem to be any justification because XRP is only used in XRapid. That's only one product that Ripple has. And the sort of changes in price, it's not really clear why the price of our XRP changes from day to day, other than things like, you know, supply and demand and hype. I'm not sure what. I mean, certainly if if Ripple added more payment providers that were using XRapid, that would obviously lower the supply of XRP, and that would obviously make it more valuable. But there's something like 10 billion XRP out there, so it's like the third largest cryptocurrency. So I don't think that there's any lack of XRP. So it's sort of a gray area how XRP even moves one way or the other.
Jason, thank you very much for the broad analysis on Ripple and XRP there. I just want to move on, and we will actually stick with you, Jason, for the minute, because we are currently in what many will consider as the longest bull market in history. This is, of course, for the stock markets, and earlier this year, the bull market celebrated its 10-year anniversary. Crypto markets are going through cycles a lot faster. So why is it so? And do you actually expect this pattern to change over time?
So this is an immature market. It's mostly retail and mostly hype-driven. Crypto has sort of come of age in a frenetic 24-hour news cycle age. And so that has sort of been reflected also in the market itself. And also the demographics of the crypto market, sort of the average crypto investor tends to be really young. And so they are sort of particularly susceptible to this versus older, to this particular hype cycle versus sort of older stock market investors. I do think we'll start seeing periods of sustained growth in crypto, and then hopefully as the market matures, and then hopefully at that point we'll start seeing bull runs that last longer.
Okay, and we will come back to you, John. What are your thoughts on this?
So, yeah, we've been in a 10-year bull market from a stocks and shares perspective. And that was off the back of the global financial crisis in 2008. So things had dropped quite low at that point. And as we know, these things are cycles. So I'm very much an economy bear, a stock bear right now. I think that we are due to hit another bigger, deeper recession than we saw in 2008. And I think that bodes well for the Bitcoin market, crypto market in general. but in particular, Bitcoin being seen as a safe haven. And I think that, it's still only 10 years old. Bitcoin's still only 10 years old. It's a lot younger, and it's a smaller boat on a much bigger sea. And in those situations, the volatility, the cycles are much greater, much shorter. We don't see it in the same way. Maybe in 20 years' time, hopefully sooner, but in 20 years' time, I'd predict that it will be a much flatter. We'll see much longer cycles, much better understood as well.
Yes, that's natural once the market matures more. Now, just finally, many argue that user experience is one of the main factors that is actually hindering the adoption of cryptocurrencies and the blockchain technology. We have slightly touched on this, but John, we'll come back to you. Do you agree with this view, and where do you actually consider the main improvements being needed?
Yeah, it can always be improved. I think it needs to be improved. Going back to it, we're still a young market. A lot of the technology around stuff is still very young, and it's naturally going to improve. And entrepreneurs will come in and help that experience and help with the onboarding. I look at Coinbase, and I think that they've got a great UI UX as an on-ramp. But I think the whole key management thing, that's what really needs to improve. Otherwise, we're just using exchanges as our bank to keep safe, but we're not really, being our own custody manager of our cryptocurrency. So I think it's around key management that I really want to see things improve. If I was smarter, I'd be doing it, but I'll leave that to people much brighter than I am.
Okay, well, I appreciate the honesty. Absolutely love it. So key management for you is where things really need to be moving forward. Jason, we will come back to you. What do you think? I know you did say, I guess, at the end of the day, crypto lives and dies at adoption, as you said earlier on this program. So what improvements are needed?
So I do think that the UI definitely needs improvement. People like, me and John, and probably you as well, know how to use cryptocurrency, but the vast majority of people still find it really exotic and kind of difficult. I have a friend that transferred some XRP over to Coinbase, but without a tag. And it took him months back and forth with Coinbase support before he was able to recover it. So it seems to me that there ought to be an easier way to sort things like this out. Also, of course, the private-public key whole thing that John was just mentioning. Of course, when you're sorting your crypto on an exchange, they have control of those private-public keys. So you're not really actually have full custody of your crypto. So you generally don't want to keep it there. You want to transfer it back and forth. Between a hot and cold wallet, for example. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that you have to do in order to be safe that is really too much trouble for the average user, For example, you also have things like different QR codes for different wallet addresses. So I add different wallet addresses, for example, for different cryptocurrencies. And then there's also things like hacks and things like security precautions you got to take. So it's a mess. I mean, I recently came across a company called Payc, which is sort of uses one QR code for multiple cryptocurrencies, and that's a possible solution. But I'm also interested to see what Jack Dorsey of Square does. I think Square, Jack Dorsey has been really into Bitcoin for a long time, and Square is one of the big payment processors in this space. So I'm really interested to see how they sort of attack the whole issue of UI UX when it comes to crypto.
You're absolutely right. Jack Dorsey has been very, very vocal with regards to his passion for the space. And I guess, I think I have to absolutely agree with you. Right now, the space looks extremely complicated. Simply, buying crypto, which crypto. So some form of simplification as we move forward into the future will be key for adoption. Absolutely right there. Guys, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure, as always, having you both on the program with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Now, before we sign off, I do have a last-minute update from my editorial staff regarding the crypto market. The total market capitalization has stabilized around the $280 billion mark. Trading activity has increased slightly. The CoinMarketCap website's daily traded volume indicator is moving towards the $60 billion zone, and Bitcoin has recovered a tiny portion of the recent loss as it remains quite a stretch below the 11K level. Well, that is all for this Wednesday's Crypto Now live show. We thank John Walsh and Jason Fernandez for their expert analysis, and we thank the audience for joining us and invite you all to accompany us every weekday at the same time.